On her initial check of the flight, Jessie saw a baby sitting alone. Thinking the parents might be close, she searched the plane but found no one in charge of the child. Surprisingly, the child was not registered on the manifest. Jessie soon realized the situation was far from normal. Jessie inquired with passengers about any potential leads, but unfortunately no one had witnessed anything concerning the missing baby or his parents. Determined to find answers, she cautiously approached the baby to search for any hints that could help identify the child or his caretakers. Then something peculiar caught her attention. As Jessie got closer to the baby, she spotted a note fastened to his blanket. It said, "Please care for him." This message only added to Jessie's unease and confusion. Although the baby appeared healthy and calm, Jessie understood that it wouldn't be wise to leave him unattended during the flight. As Jessie's confusion transformed into panic, she discovered that the child was missing from the flight's official records. Realizing the urgency, she alerted the cabin crew and swiftly contacted the airport. In her state of panic, she couldn't help but let out a small scream, which caused concern among fellow passengers. Jessie alerted the cabin crew about the baby and the note she discovered. Concerned, the cabin crew relayed the situation to the pilot. The pilot promptly contacted the airport to inform them about what was going on in the plane. To their surprise, they received a rather weird and unexpected response. The pilot quickly alerted the airport, sharing all the details they knew about the situation. In response, the airport officials reached out to the police and arranged for immediate medical assistance upon landing. However, upon closer examination, it became clear the severity of the situation exceeded their initial expectations. In their quest for answers, the police promptly launched an investigation, eager to uncover any leads. However, they faced the hurdle of obtaining permission to access the airport footage. As of now, they had no substantial leads to follow, and the baby remained in the sky beyond their reach and scrutiny. As soon as they discovered the baby, police sprang into action. They wasted no time reaching out to airlines and double-checking the flight manifest, but the baby's name didn't appear anywhere. They even scoured the airport's CCTV footage and investigated the flight, hoping to uncover clues about the baby's parents. As the flight continued, the kind-hearted passengers took turns soothing and comforting the baby. Jessie in particular never left his sight, offering comfort and reassurance. However, all the noise and activity began to overwhelm the little one, causing obvious distress. This was definitely not a good situation for the baby. The little one began to cry, relentlessly seeking his mother's comfort. But alas, she was nowhere to be found, a mystery to all. Inquiries were met with silence, leaving the baby to persist in his wordless plea for maternal solace, his tiny voice echoing with a longing only he could express. Jessie attempted to soothe the baby by singing to him and playing games with him. She even offered him a bottle, but he staunchly rejected it. Suddenly, a harrowing realization struck her. The baby's condition was far worse than what they had initially believed, and the signs were starting to show. As time passed, the baby began to sweat, leaving Jessie feeling concerned. Since she had no prior experience with children, she was unsure of how to help. She attempted to seek assistance from fellow passengers, but they were equally clueless. Sadly, the baby's health was declining and it needed help soon. The baby started to babble unintelligible words, causing concern for Jessie and the fellow passengers. They sensed something was amiss and knew the baby required immediate medical assistance. Just then, another flight attendant alerted them to the presence of a doctor towards the rear of the aircraft a few seats away. Luckily, a doctor happened to be on the plane. He wasted no time in examining the baby's condition. They determined that immediate hospital care was necessary. Sadly, the flight still had a few more hours to go. The doctor believed waiting that long was not an option. After an examination, the doctor discovered the baby's temperature, signaling the need for immediate medical care. Hastily, this critical update was relayed to the pilot, who began sweating nervously. Overwhelmed with apprehension, he couldn't fathom how such a distressing situation had unfolded before them. How did they allow this to happen? The doctor urgently advised taking the baby to the nearest hospital. In response, the flight control team chose to make an emergency landing for the baby's sake. They were determined to take care of the baby's well-being first and foremost and worry about unraveling the mystery of its parents later. The flight crew urgently wanted to land the plane in an emergency as the baby's condition posed a significant danger. They were determined to transport him to the hospital as quickly as possible. However, the predicament arose when they realized that the closest airport lacked immediate access to a medical facility. Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story. The baby's condition worsened, requiring urgent medical intervention. The flight crew realized the situation demanded swift action to preserve his life. The doctor promptly positioned himself beside the baby to closely observe his vital signs. Time was of the essence, and the doctor knew they had to land within the hour. The police had no idea where the baby's parents were or how to reach them despite their diligent efforts. Nobody was captured on CCTV footage due to an unfortunate malfunction in the airport's computer system during the flight's boarding. Likewise, the airport staff couldn't find even one trace of anyone involved. The baby's health was critical, and the doctors needed to do a DNA test to confirm his identity. They also needed to provide him with necessary health care to save the baby's life. The plane crew had to provide him with emergency medical care and medication to bring down his fever. The doctor understood the urgency and found the closest hospital was still an hour away. They carefully watched the baby's status and did all they could to maintain his stability during the crucial minutes before they could reach the hospital. The baby would be the first one off of the plane. As Jessie grew more and more frustrated, she demanded answers. How did the baby end up on the flight? Who had abandoned the child? She sought more information, but no one could provide any. She knew that someone must have seen something, and she couldn't fathom why they weren't speaking up. The curious police officers on the ground questioned the pilot about the strange note. They asked if he had any leads on who wrote it or what it meant. He explained the note had a cryptic message and some numbers on the bottom that hadn't been decoded. Please, take care of him, which was mysterious and didn't reveal much about the baby or his parents or caregivers wherever they were. The initial M didn't shed much light on the reality of the situation either, but there were still numbers mentioned on the note. Jessie, in hopes of aiding the investigation as quickly as possible, handed over the note of random numbers that seemed to have been jotted down hastily. The police almost immediately recognized a pattern among them, prompting a lead officer to dive straight into action, eager to unravel the baby's mystery. The coordinates made by the numbers helped the police limit their search to the baby's parents. They had clues on where to focus their search. It seemed as if the person who left the baby intentionally left enough information for the police to discover their identity and where to find them. After the long flight finally came to an end, the plane reached the closest airport with a nearby hospital. The medical team promptly rushed the baby to receive additional medical care. Everyone who was on the flight breathed a sigh of relief that the baby had safely endured the entire flight. The little one got admitted to the hospital's intensive care unit, where diligent doctors kept an eye on him. They conducted tests and procedures which revealed the baby lacked proper nourishment. Unfortunately, this was not a favorable discovery and didn't mean the baby was out of the woods yet. The doctors tirelessly treated the baby as best as they could, working non-stop until his condition stabilized, which they accomplished successfully. The child needed fluids and nutrients to keep his vitals stable. Only after the baby gained some strength could they conduct additional tests and exams to find the child's parents. The police were guarding the baby and keeping a close watch on him. They knew that he was a key piece of evidence in their investigation. They needed to find the person referred to as M. They had a feeling that if they did not guard the baby, he might disappear. The baby needed to regain his strength significantly before the doctors could conduct a DNA test to confirm his identity and begin the search for his birth parents. So they had to wait. The police kept rushing the doctors so they could continue the investigation, but they were continuously held back. Eventually, the doctors came with the good news that the baby had recovered to a great extent. After days in the hospital waiting for this very moment, they could now proceed with further testing. Boris, the police captain, was relieved that they would get the answers they were looking for soon. The doctors conducted several blood and DNA tests to determine the baby's identity and find his birth parents. They didn't get initial hits in the test, but they knew they were missing something crucial. But then one of the officers brought good news. They managed to decrypt the entire message after some hours. There was a woman named Megan living in the house that matched the coordinates that were on the strange note. The police were almost certain that this Megan must have some of the answers they were looking for to this mystery. The coordinates on the note led the police to a remote house. At first, it seemed like the place was abandoned. Then they saw a light turning on and they knew there had to be someone inside. They had a search warrant, but when knocking on the door, no one answered. The police team that arrived at the house deemed the situation critical and were ready to demand answers at any cost. With permission to force entry, they burst through the front door. Once inside the house, they were taken aback to find an elderly couple, completely shocked by the police's presence. The couple was stunned as the police barged into their home, demanding answers about a baby's identity and how he ended up on a flight. They were clueless and had no connection to the situation. However, the woman's name was Megan, which seemed to be the only link to the confusion. The police explained the situation to the older couple and asked them to come with them to the hospital to meet the baby. They were curious about the whole situation, however, they got a little hesitant as well. They were clear they didn't want to get into any trouble. The DNA test results were close to being complete and the doctors were waiting for the couple to arrive. The DNA test didn't get any hits on the hospital's online database, however, but they had a suspicion that they needed to test the woman named Megan too. The baby needed proper feeding and care, and the doctors were hopeful the couple would be able to take care of him once he was discharged. However, Megan told the doctors and police that she had no idea who this baby is. She had no intention of taking him home. The doctors asked Megan to cooperate in testing her DNA, but she initially refused. She didn't give birth to a baby. She didn't want anything to do with it. But the police had sufficient evidence to make Megan cooperate. She had no choice but to comply with the request. Megan gave in and let the doctors run a DNA test on her, even though she was very surprised by the sudden strange request. Her husband Jason had no clue either what was going on. After the test, they were led to a separate room to get questioned by police detectives. The detectives questioned the couple about why a baby would be sent to them. Megan herself continued to repeat she had absolutely no idea about the baby. The detectives were actually starting to believe her until she made a slip-up and revealed something specific that completely baffled them. Megan was quickly taken to visit the baby alone, where she burst into tears at the mere sight of the child. It seemed like she just couldn't contain herself. There was definitely more going on that she didn't even want to tell her husband about. What could it be? When Megan finally saw the baby, she fell to her knees and cried tears of joy and relief. She was overwhelmed with emotion and gratitude toward the medical team and the police for saving the baby's life. But why would she care so much about a baby she said she didn't even know? The detective at the hospital demanded answers from Megan about how the baby ended up on the flight and how she knew this child. Then one of the doctors came rushing in with a strange explanation. The DNA results had returned with something shocking the team had never seen before. It turns out Megan was related to the baby. Megan sighed. She knew she had to come clean about the child if she wanted it to be safe and sound. She was about to explain herself when her husband came rushing into the hospital room, wanting answers as well. Megan explained that the baby's mother, her daughter, was unable to take care of him and sent him to them. However, when they realized the baby was sick and needed medical attention, they got cold feet because it raised too many questions. Jason, her husband, had no idea about this. In the end, the baby stayed with his grandparents and the police closed the case. The incident showcased how important it is to report any suspicious activity. It also showed the dedication of the airline staff who worked tirelessly to save the baby's life and solve the mystery of his identity.